Hello, everybody. This is Carl. I'm back for another movie review for the month of October. This one I've been dying to do for a hot while. The first Doctor Strange movie. I already covered Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness when that came out, which I thoroughly enjoyed. It's already up on the channel, like a few days after the movie came out. It's up on the channel. Check it out if you want to hear my thoughts of the film. But now I want to cover the first one, the part one, Doctor Strange, uh, starring Benedict Cumberbatch, which I think is like a perfect casting choice. He's a spot on uh, uh, Stephen Strange. Uh, Directed by Scott Derrickson, written by John Safdie. You also got uh, Chiwetel Ejiofor as Carl Mordo. Uh, uh, Doctor Strange is like arch enemy, but in this is kind of like a slight twist where they're actually comrades, because in the comics, Mordo was using like the Ancient One's teachings in order to gain more power to eventually overthrow the Ancient One, but Stephen stood in their way, and like pretty much got owned by the Ancient One. Then you got Christine Palmer, played by Rachel McAdams. Wong, played by Benedict Wong. Uh, and you got Max Mikkelsen playing as Caecilius, which in recent comics of the death of Doctor Strange, they had like Caecilius as like Mortal's like henchman in that. But I'm glad they acknowledged that Caecilius is like an actual character in Marvel Comics now. But uh and you got Tilda Swinton as the Ancient One. Now Christine Palmer in the comics is was known as the Night Nurse, to help like superheroes if they need like medical attention without worry of their secret identity getting out. Uh, Rosario Dawson's character Clara Temple is also another night nurse, but it's more distinct in the Netflix Marvel TV shows. But it's I like to think people should look up that like Claire is also a night nurse. There's two night nurses in Marvel Comics, and these two need to meet up at some point. And I just want to get this out there because to this day, I distinctly remember the huge issue, uh, a controversy surrounding this movie regarding the Ancient One, because in the Marvel comics, he was depicted as like a Tibetan, uh, Tibetan man, but China has their, at least like the leader of China had its issues, with or just don't acknowledge, Tibet. So in order to get this, like, I'm not sure like how that was resolved, because this movie had to be released worldwide, which includes China, which is the MCU's, at least a lot of American films, big uh, you know uh, moneymaker kind of country, next to like America itself. And that little, and then also with like gender swapping the Ancient One because it's supposed to be a guy, but in the movie they point out that she's from like I think they kind of do this in here, this dialogue in here, because of the controversy, or at least they know that people are gonna be asking why he's not a Tibetan man. But it's from Celtic origin. That's all there is to it, to that discussion. But I guess less is more. It's fine. At the end of the day, nobody really cared. Like I knew nobody would. But Tilda Swinton is an awesome actress. Like she played the hell out of this role. I was so like surprised how in Avengers Endgame they brought her back for like a brief cameo, showing that she was there during the Battle of New York, defending the New York Sanctum from aliens as crashing through and was about to attacking the area, which included uh, the Sanctum that was in Greenwich Village in New York. And I was like, when I saw that in theater, it's like, so you were there. So why don't you go down there and freaking help them? It's like, God, you got magic powers. You don't think that could be useful against these aliens attacking New York? But yeah, I just want to get that all out there before we get down to the nitty gritty. Like Cassidius, which I think is like a pretty good villain for this movie. Played by Max Mikkelsen, which is also an incredible actor. Sneaks into Kamatage, the hub of the Ancient One, where she and other masters of the mystic arts teach new students, and which he was a part of. Him and his little cronies sneaks into the library of Kamatage, takes the librarian, uh, cuts off his head, and use the blood. What did they use on? Because I saw this yesterday and I'm blanking on it. They didn't like use it, but it looks like no, they because they put like a it seems like a ritual because they put down like a bowl. It seems like they're collecting like blood or something like that. But they behead the librarian, steal the pages of Cagliostro in order to commune with Dormammu from the Dark Dimension, from their world. Because Icelius is angry with the Ancient One. Because you see, she later chases them down and uses the visuals in this is stunning. It's like Inception times 3. And I think, Multiverse of Madness kind of stepped it up from there. As far as like, kaleidoscope type of effects is very good. And you hear Caecilia just screams like, hypocrite! And just like showing like the Ancient One, like, got like serious skills when it comes to like martial arts and magic. And, but they managed to escape. In comes our introduction to Stephen Strange, and like showing off his skills. Why is he such a great surgeon? Because as he mentions later on in the film, how like he managed to pick up things so quickly because he has a very good memory. That's how like when he studied, got his like various degrees all at once, because he studied like all these and retained so much information from these various things. He which he was doing surgery and he's listening to music, and other doctors was challenging him about like what song is what year this song charted, uh uh and that, and he mentions about like 1975 Chuck Mangione. And it's like where do you store all this useless information? Useless? This man charted the musical charts with just like a bugle horn. And like, you ain't supposed to be playing music, doing, in a hospital because it distracts the doctors. But I guess like he's a renowned neurosurgeon. Like I guess it's okay for him because he can do this stuff while listening to music because he's that good. But I like he's such like a musical nerd where he's like because he often makes jokes with Wong. It's like oh, just Wong. You know, kind of like Adele, Beyonce, Eminem. It's just like it's that part got me. That was really funny because like yeah, it's like I can't imagine nobody ever put that kind of joke together before. But anyway, uh, he also shows his arrogance because you know one doctor who you see show up in Multiverse of Madness during the wedding that you know mentioned about how he lost a brother during the snap. Uh, uh, he gives this guy grief because he misdiagnosed uh, this guy with a bullet wound that he thought was dead, but no, he's not dead, but he will be if you don't pull his bullet out. So he managed to do it, and then like kind of like humiliate the guy at the same time. But you see like him and Doctor Strange and Christine used to be a thing. You see that like hinted at with the dialogue uh, that ultimately didn't go nowhere. Kind of like polar, sort of polar opposite from what we saw from the What If episode with Doctor Strange. What if he lost his heart instead of his hands? Kind of situation. But then of course the car crash, that kind of car crash that if you are any way familiar with the origin story of Doctor Strange, that has to happen. Don't text and drive, people. But also like because this is like this movie occurred after the events of Civil War, where he's talking on the phone with uh, 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 an associate, mentioning about because he doesn't want to ruin his perfect streak, and they bring up about like a colonel with a back injury, which if you saw Civil War, that Rhodey got injured during the fight with a back, and he is a colonel. I'm glad they threw that in there. But he denied that because like, oh, it's interesting, but no, because as is briefly mentioned in the sequel, but if you read enough in the comics, Doctor Strange, as a young man, started to become a doctor because, well, he was already in college learning to be a doctor, but his sister, he had a young sister, she got sick. He thought he could help her. He failed. Then kind of led him to believe, like, okay, I'm not going to do another surgery where it's not a guaranteed win for me, because I do not want another death on my hands, because it's like he's a control freak kind of situation. But of course, he injures his hands. He's chewing out everybody, including Christine, about like, I could have done better. Like like his hands are his life. He can't do the thing that he loves doing because his hands are not able to hold a scalpel, let alone do anything complex that he used to do. So he got word from this former patient who had a spinal injury that was healed thanks to these monks in Kamar-Taj, played by this guy played by Benjamin Bratt, who I think is like an incredible actor. I love him. You recognize him in the earlier Law and Order shows. Uh, oh, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Uh, yeah, Benjamin Bratt. That's what I knew. I keep wanting to call him Benjamin Pratt. Damn you, Chris Pratt. Uh, so he goes to Kamar-Taj, spending because he already spent tons of money on these various different radical experimentations and surgeries and trying to fix his hands, but he's nearly out of money. So he used whatever he has left to get him to Kamar-Taj, and he meets up with uh, Mortal. Now, I want to point out here that kudos to like the direction as well as the acting from uh, uh, Benedict Cumberbatch. With like every time the camera is focused on his hands, it's constantly like shaking because he can't hold it steady anymore. Because it has to be like it's subtle. Because like in lesser hands, no pun intended, you wouldn't most actors probably wouldn't keep that going or being directed to keep that going. But it's like, yeah, that's the whole point. It's like, I don't know if they keep doing that in Doctor Strange 2, but at least in this, I like the fact that it's like when the camera is on his hands, or if you notice, even if it's not focused on the hands, but you still can see, it still shakes. It's not, like you do not want the audience to forget that his hands don't function the same way anymore. You can still use it, you can't do anything too complicated with it, because like it's like he's holding up he can still hold up a glass of water, but it will shake. The hands will shake. It won't keep it steady. I'm glad when he shaves, he's not cutting his own doggone throat in the process. Probably should have somebody to do that for him, just in case. I can't imagine him using the bathroom. Can you imagine? You're trying to use the bathroom and it's like a sprinkler system. That part would be funny. But anyway, he meets the Ancient One. I like the subterfuge here, because even though we know it was played by Tilda Swinton from the jump, the fact that he's subverted, the audience expectations that are not too familiar or whatever, that you see this old man that is clearly like looks like nearly the comic book accurate Ancient One, but no, it's just some guy named Hamir that has only one hand, and it's like he's people's taking off his Stephen's code, and it's like the camera's not. I mean, like if you pay attention, you see like you don't see the face, but you see Tilda Swinton just standing there like dressed like a common kind of like a servant, and holding some tray of tea, and strange. You looking at Strange's POV of this old man, and the camera's like just focus on that, and then off the side you see like Tilda Swinton just pouring tea, and it's like and you hear just focus on the old man, and Strange saying like thank you for seeing me, Ancient One, and you just hear like Tilda Swinton like, you're quite welcome, Stephen, and it's like there, it's like the cinematography is great, and not a lot of people give this movie its just due. And like I did a YouTube tier list of all the MCU films up to the point of, I think, the Hawkeye show, and once after Black Panther 2, Phase 4 will be over, and we'll begin to Phase 5. So at the end of each phase, I'll go back to the tier list and add in the next batch of TV show and movies, and add to the ranking. But you can check out the ranking up to the point of Hawkeye up on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/talkativecarl, because I have other ranking tiers as well, like ranking every Batman movie, and ranking every Spider-Man movie, and ranking all the Disney princesses. So you can check out all that on the channel, which is youtube.com/talkativecarl, by the way. Hit that notification bell and like button. So the Ancient One proceeds to explain to Stephen about how because you got, I really love this, because you got like somebody of the mystical variety that has that perception, but understands about like utilizing words of that someone like Steven would be more accessible to, be more willing to hear and understand, like using like something like code or cells, things of that nature to you know uh, uh, he's willing to listen to the entire conversation if he uses words that he's more akin to. But you have like somebody who's you know like, lived through the realm of science and surgery and medicine, while talking with or asking for help, or working with somebody of the mystical variety that he would, on normal circumstances, uh would call that hooey. Um, but he asked, like, how did you amend uh a C1 vertebrae, blah blah blah. And it's like, what if I told you, if I can, like, I taught the cells to mend itself in various different ways. And then she shows him a book. I like to believe it's, she put these pages in a very mystical way so that we'll understand what he's looking at. But you see, it's like a picture of a body via like acupuncture, and then a picture of a body via like X-rays, and it's like different types of maps designed by a man who only saw through one particular way or through a keyhole. But I can teach you how to see things in a full spectrum. But then she, even though like Strange is completely skeptical about this, she shows him like the astral plane by pushing his soul out, which is like an iconic shot that she does to him, that he does to Spider-Man. And it's like really, really cool looking. It always gets me every time. But then she, this is where the trippiness comes in, because now she's showing him all these different like planes of existence, open up, through the third eye, and he's just like flying through like all these different like layers of the cosmos. And it's like, all these hands grabbing on hands, and his fingers turns to hands, and that turns in the fingers their hands, and it's like everything's like tripping. He's falling through an eyeball, and he's showing like a visions of the dark dimension, and as the whole thing is completely trippy. And this opened up his mind finally, that it's more to this world than what he initially believed. Just like Mortal told him initially, like, forget what you know. Forget what you think you know. And he asks, like, teach me. No. And kicks out. Like, wait! And then he out there for 5 hours, still, like, begging to be taught. And, Ancient One's reluctant, but thanks to the encouragement of Mordo, who explains, like, I know you think this guy is like Caecilius, but I think he can be a great asset to fighting someone like Caecilius. So they let him in and try to teach him. And like something as basic as open up a portal using like the sling rings. But a lot of people feel that this is like, using sling rings is very level 1 mysticism. And by the time you should be progressing in your art of your spells, which I tend to agree with them on this, you shouldn't be using a sling ring after a while. Someone like Wong and Ancient One and Mordo, when you get on their level, you should be able to like make a portal without those things. Those should be like, training wheels of a tool. And it's still weird that they had to still use that after all this time. But I also thoroughly enjoyed this moment because it was in the trailer, and I distinctly still remember it, where it's like, you know, Mordo showing Strange his quarters, and he gives him this little piece of paper, and it says Shambhala on it, and he asks like, "What is this? My mantra? Wi-Fi password? We're not savages." And I was like, I got a kick out of that from the trailer straight into the movie. Like, I love that little joke. It's so minor, but it still gets me. It's an underrated joke from the MCU. I think there's plenty of those throughout the MCU, but that one got a kick out of me. It's like, cause got a laugh up there. It's like you're subverting your expectations of like what you think. Like, oh, they're gonna be high in the Himalayas and away from technology and stuff like. No, like they have computers. They know about like TV and stuff like that. And it's like come on, it's like like don't be a don't stereotype us. I kind of like that. It's kind of like thinking like, oh, you're old, so you don't know how to use a phone. But there's on rare occasions you see like old people like know their freaking technology better than like most teenagers, and it's like, don't judge a book by its cover. So he meets Wong in a library, and he starts studying all these books, and he's studying pretty doggone fast. People are so confused, and I don't blame them about like what's the time that went by, because has it been like a few months? Has it been a year? There's never been like a certain thing on like a certain concrete timetable of how long he's been being taught by the Ancient One. And speaking of which, she left him out in a freaking just to get him to understand about surrendering control, so he can learn how to open portals, like a basic, level 1 type of spell. She left him out in the middle of Mount Everest, saying like, you got like 30 minutes to figure this out, but yeah, at least 3 minutes before hypothermia set in. So like, good luck, Steven. Is like, wait, and it's like, so he has to like sink or swim at this point. And of course, Mordo's like, worried because like, oh my God, I don't get him, because it's like, she obviously clearly did this before, and it's like, nearly, who knows how many people she nearly let die just trying to, figure it out to open up a portal. But in the end, he learns how to do it, and then he just learns more and more about astral projection and other skills. And then he finds the book of Cagliostro, and the pages are torn out because of Caecilius, who, you know, uh, learn how to uh, make these like mystic bond things, because his plan is to tear down each sanctum that's supposed to be like a massive protection shield for the world to protect against mystical threats that will harm the world. Just like, as Wong said, the Avengers protect the physical plane, we have to protect the mystical plane. And if these sanctums fall down, the protection shield goes down, and the dark dimension and Dormammu can easily invade. So, Strange looking at this book, and he used the Eye of Agamotto, which had the Time Stone inside. He wills it to reverse time to reform the pages, which is like a cool visual. And uh, and one of which is like learn about like controlling time, but then Mordo and Wong warn him about like messing with the laws, natural laws, because one of which is like, or at least two things will happen if you keep messing with that. Either you're going to get yourself trapped in a time loop, or you will just run the risk of not existing at all. And then they proceed to find out that the London Sanctum has fallen, and and Strange has to like fight in the New York Sanctum, against Caecilius and his group of men. And another funny joke, which is still stuck with me, is like people keep messing around with his name. And, it's like he asked Stephen his name. It's like he's like Mr. Doctor, Mr. Doctor Strange, possibly. Who am I to judge? And I love that. I love that back and forth. That is very, very funny. Uh, uh, so they proceed to fight. Strange trapped a couple, because there's like an awesome visuals of magic here. It's like you got these three magic doors that's like is a doorway into different parts of the world. One desert, one ocean, one directs to like a forest, and you turn a knob and it takes you different areas of environment in the world, and he traps a couple of them in different areas. But Strange ends up having to kill one of these guys, and being a doctor, he's of course distraught. But he ends up, but before we get to that, he fights Caecilius, and this little lantern thing with the glowing thing inside that Caecilius points out that you don't even know what that thing does it? But you get to see what it does in Multiverse of Madness. I don't think I brought it up then, but I'm bringing it up now. I was like, I'm so glad you finally get to see what that does. And it's pretty much shoots out fireballs or something like that. But you need to, ignite it with a separate flame thing to cause it to shoot out like rapid fireballs. But you get to see the cloak of levitation that protects Steven because, as Mortal points out during one of Steven's training, that certain mystical weapons has to choose you. You don't choose it. And the cloak of levitation, who normally probably doesn't go to anybody, chooses Strange and protects Strange from Caecilius' lethal attacks, and you get a lot of comedic moments with his cape or cloak, and he constantly pulls and tugs at Steven to point it at this little mechanical wooden wire thing, and he tosses at Caecilius, and kudos to Matt Mickelson's kind of choreography or whatever. He just like just like backs up and kneels down and like slinks like this, and you get this awesome dialogue with between him and Strange, and why he turned against the Ancient One, mostly because he got disillusioned by the Ancient One and his teachings, because he went to her, he lost family, and he went to an Ancient One to conquer death, or at least learn the skills he needs to conquer death. But that's you can't, and that's the whole thing with this movie is time. Uh, you know, uh, and he points out like time is the enemy of us all, and that's what Dormammu promises them, like free of death, but time is something that's supposed to be cherished. It's like we all got finite amount of time, and you can't fight against that. You will lose. And just like he quotes the same thing that Steven mentions to the Ancient One earlier in the film when he first met her, is that we're and that's probably why she turned him down originally, because he quoted the exact same thing that Caecilius said, like we're all insignificant things in this grand universe kind of thing. And it's like that Strange really is taken aback by that, because like this is you see like himself through this. But he gets mortally wounded by one of Caecilius' henchmen. He goes, course, to the hospital and meets up with Christine, who saved his life. At the same time, destroys the astral version of this enemy. And he confronts uh, the Ancient One, after he does his cool move where he just like throws on the cloak of levitation. It's such a cool boss move. And he confronts the Ancient One about like, because Cassius points out that you think she lives so long? She draws from the same power that I do. And of course, the Ancient One had to do this because, like, you know, she didn't find like a proper successor, and that's the whole thing. But in the comics, that the Ancient One wanted like a proper successor that he can confidently, or she can confidently rely on to carry on her life's work after she was gone. But so she goes to find more help right at the same time as Casillas comes back, and with a swift thinking by Strange, wraps them in a mirror dimension to keep the main reality from causing damage to the sanctum. The mirror dimension, it's like, nothing affects the real world while in the mirror dimension. But Mortal points out, like, well, they can still kill us here. So it's essentially was suicide. But I like the dialogue between Mortal and Strange earlier, whereas, like, you're because Strange didn't sign up to be in some mystical war, and he doesn't want to take a life. He became a doctor, and he swore an oath to save lives, and like, he's not going to be continuing taking people's lives, and yeah, like, he maintained that he's a hero, but he's also a doctor, which kind of coincides with saving lives at all costs. But then, as they chasing down the street, and almost getting killed, Ancient One shows up. Mortal finally believes what was said, that she does draw from the Dark Dimension. A fight ensues. Really great choreography, but Casillas managed to get the upper hand, mortally wounds her, which stops the kaleidoscope mirror dimension combo going on, and you see her falling off the building and lands on the ground. And Mortal and Strange take her to the hospital, where see a nice moment with Strange, who you think is like, oh, I want to do this, but he has to relinquish control, and he gives it to the guy he was berating earlier in a film to try to save this woman's life. But you see, like, Ancient One's astral projection go out and looking out the window at this thunderstorm. Strange astral projects to talk with her, and it's like a nice visual moment where, like, time just slowing down, and because she's slowing time down just enough so she can just take that brief moment just to watch the lightning strike and the beauty of it and the rain. But she has to hit home to Strange, like, not everything's about you. You need Mortal to stop him. You need his strength just like he needs your flexibility. And it's like I said, just like the theme of time really plays out, like just stretching out time just to take in the beauty of a moment that you otherwise probably could not or have not the time to see. But that entire sequence, you really got to pay attention to that, because that really, like, really incentivizes, like, Steven's motivations moving forward into the preceding films. Of course, he's still arrogant, but he learns, because a lot of people like to make a comparison, like, oh, he's just like an Iron Man clone, but it's like, or telling the same origin story with, you did with Tony Stark, you're doing the same thing with Stephen Strange. Like this same story with themes of like an arrogant person learning to be a better person uh, existed long before Tony Stark was ever a thing. So it's like, you know, I don't. I mean, I understand that, but I don't believe it, or I should say, I like to see it's more to it than that, than just a carbon copy. Because he's arrogant in a different way. Not everybody's arrogant in at the same thing. Tony's arrogant when it comes to his like, inventions and like his way of doing things. Yeah, how he perceives the way things should be done, and uh, Stephen is arrogant as far as like his skills and his knowledge and his medical know-how, but it's just like arrogant for two different reasons. But you see these two bump heads in Infinity War, but Strange releases control and trust in Tony's plan rather than him going on his own plan. Shows, well, definitely more growth with Stephen than Stark in that moment, but mostly it's just Stark, still suffering from like, a bit of PTSD. So as far as like Thanos, as he says, is still in his head and all the other stuff. So he's still working through that kind of thing. But Stephen and Immortal go to Immortal's already in a moment of disillusionment right now with feel like he's being lied to by the Ancient One, but he had to put all that to the side to stop Caecilius. So they go to Hong Kong with the last, because they just need to take down at least 2 sanctums out of the 3 at the very least. So they couldn't deal with the New York sanctum, so they go to the Hong Kong sanctum to take that one down. They arrive seemingly too late, but Stephen rewound time up to the point of the initial, explosion of the building before everything else around it torn into chaos. And they revive like Wong, and they fight off the henchmen and Caecilius. And then Strange goes up to the brief portal that leads into the dark dimension, and he sets up this time loop around him, and I still quote this, and it's like, Dormammu, I come to bargain, you come to die. And he proceeds to like through a blast and kills Strange, but then a nice visual effect is Strange seems like he's coming right back from where he started, and it's like time just rewound and he's starting again. It's kind of like he Groundhog's Day the villain, and it's like he weaponized the movie Groundhog's Day, and it's like that's the most ingenious, to this day, is the most ingenious way to defeat a villain, because rather than sheer power, he's out thought the villain, but it's just like it's a little bit more to it. He traps a villain in a perpetual a state that kind of forces him to surrender. So like he continuously getting himself killed, and I like to think in a way during this time he learns a bit about how to like he's trains a bit while getting killed, and his skills as a sorcerer goes up, not exponentially, but like quite a bit. But because I like the line from Stephen. It's like, well, Jules gracious enough to, lend your power, from your world into ours with Caecilius. Well, I thought I would return the favor and lend you power from my world into yours. It's called time, never ending. Uh, uh, so we're gonna be here every day, all day. was like, well, you will die. Oh well, it's like at least you won't have. I may lose, but you won't win either. So it's like, you want me to break the loop? You know, uh, get your buddies and stay away from uh uh stay away from intruding on our plane, which is not going to last long, given the fact that how Doctor Strange 2 ends. When you meet Clea, which is like the niece or daughter of Dormammu. Pretty sure it's the daughter, or wasn't the niece? One second. Uh, uh, yeah, yeah, it's the uncle. Uh, Dormammu is Clea's uncle. Uh, but anyway, the loop was like impressive. It was impressively done, like a genius way to uh, take down the main villain. So he agrees not to intrude on Earth, and he calls in Caecilius and the rest of his cronies. And you see them as he's calling them in. They start to turn into like skinny versions of the mindless ones that you've seen a lot in like the Marvel comics, which is like Dormammu's uh, thugs and minions, grunts essentially. Uh, and so like the mystical and metaphysical plane are safe now, but Mordo decides like after this, I'm not messing with you guys no more. You broke. We have to break the laws of nature, which I believe was like the way it's supposed to be, and was hypocrites. Like I can't run with y'all. So he's off. He's obviously becoming like a bad guy, which we don't see. Well, technically, we don't see our Baron Mordo in Doctor Strange 2, but a different variant of him in Multiverses in Madness. But I'm pretty sure in the third Doctor Strange movie, we'll see our Baron Mordo make a return. And of course, you see him like taking away Benjamin Bratt's character's, whatever mystical power he was using to keep him from being paralyzed. He takes that away, saying like, "No more sorcerers." And another post credit, you see like the lead up to Thor Ragnarok, with Thor like helping Stephen helping Thor find his father. But this movie is like awesome. I still enjoy this movie. I think I put it on the A tier list because unlike most people, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I love Doctor Strange as one of my favorite characters. Uh, I love when it comes to like magic and the mysticism and stuff like that. I love things surrounding that. So I'm a little bit biased, but let me know what you guys thought. If you've seen Doctor Strange 1 recently, let me know what your thoughts are, or at least rewatch it and come back to me and see if like your mind has changed about it, because it's not an awful film. Some people, they like to throw around like these issues that's like really drags down the movie for them. Like, Captain Marvel, a lot of people like to throw it like throw around the word trash movie, whereas it really is not. You have like a real issue with like either with uh Brie Larson, or just like having like a female led movie, or just like a female empowerment movie or whatever. And either way is stupid as hell and not a real reason to hate the film. But a more understandable reason is like, oh, she seems uh like there's no emotion or in the character, or is like, no range to it. Even though they know Brie Larson is an incredible actress, so she knows how to do it. But I don't blame the actress. I put it on more so the direction. But that, next time I do a review for Captain Marvel, I will explain that. But as far as like Doctor Strange is concerned, I think it's not like S tier. Obviously, I definitely put in like a good solid A minus, because like some people's grievances towards this movie I understand, but it didn't really ruin things for me. I still get a kick out of it. Check out, really take a close attention to like the whole things with time. All that is very well handled. It's like Caicedo's with his view on time and how it's an enemy of everybody. How like Strange's view on time. He has a watch that's broken, and he, you know, his like perception of time. Time he needs to get his mend his hands so he can have the time to get back to his actual life, and the time that the ancient one is still in to sustain her life, and like what she perceives as like the greater good, in order to like find the person she needs to be the successor and everything like that, in order to make sure that the world is protected after she's gone. All that is vehemently important. But anyway, I will see you guys later on in a week for more reviews. But I will see you guys later. I might stream a little bit of Octopath Traveler after like an hour or so. I need to get me something to eat, then get that loaded up. But I will see you guys later. Take care.